What would you do if the enemy you were raised to fear looked at you with the eyes of a dying boy begging to live? The Arizona desert of the 1870s burned like a furnace. Heat waves rose from the cracked earth, twisting the air into shifting shapes. Ethan Lai, only 19, rode his tough-done mare named Dust Devil across the southern line of the Circle S Ranch. He had grown up under this brutal sun. He knew its sting, its cruelty, its silence. To him, the land was not just home. It was a teacher that showed no mercy. Ethan was an orphan. His parents had lost their small homestead when the dry earth swallowed their crops and their hopes. Jedediah Stone, the harsh owner of the Circle S Ranch, had taken Ethan in, not out of kindness, but because he needed a cheap ranch hand. Ethan learned to ride before he learned to read, and learned to shoot before he learned to spell. Jedediah had raised him on simple rules: trust no one, fear the Apache, shoot first, ask nothing. That morning started like any other. Ethan checked for missing cattle and scanned the horizon for danger. Trouble in this land always had one name: Apache. Jedediah had filled Ethan's head with stories of raids, burned homes, and settlers shot in their beds. So when Ethan saw buzzards circling above a narrow, sun-scorched arroyo, his stomach tightened. Buzzards meant death. He nudged Dust Devil toward the rocky drop. The smell hit him first. Fresh blood, thick and sharp. He tasted it in the back of his throat. The ground below was torn up as if men had fought for their lives. Two bodies lay twisted against the rocks, both Apache warriors. Their dark hair was matted with blood, arrows stuck in their chests. But something was wrong. These arrows were Apache arrows. They had been killed by their own. Jedediah's first rule screamed in Ethan's mind: never get involved in Apache business. Ethan was about to turn his horse around when he heard it. A low groan. Soft, weak, human. He froze. Another groan came, this one thinner, like breath slipping through cracked lips. Ethan climbed down, rifle in hand, scanning the rocks. Finally, half hidden beneath a jagged ledge, he saw him. A young Apache, no older than Ethan. He was slumped against the stone wall, his buckskin tunic torn open, soaked dark with blood. An arrow stuck deep in his side. His skin was hot with fever. His face was streaked with dirt and pain. His eyes were closed. His breath shallow. Ethan lifted his rifle, pointing it at the young warrior's chest. Jedediah's voice rattled inside him. The only good Apache is a dead Apache. Ethan steadied his finger on the trigger. But then the Apache's eyes opened, just a little. They locked onto Ethan's. There was no hatred, no rage, no threat, only a silent plea. A boy begging not to die alone in the dirt. Ethan's heart slammed inside him. His mother's voice, long pushed aside, rose like a forgotten memory. She had once read him scripture by lamplight. Do not stand by while your neighbor bleeds. Who was his neighbor now? The rancher who worked him like a mule? Or the boy bleeding out beneath the rocks? Ethan lowered the rifle. Hold on, he muttered, dropping to his knees. Just hold on. He grabbed the arrow and yanked it free. The Apache screamed, his body jerking, then slumped unconscious. Ethan pressed a strip torn from his own shirt against the wound. The boy's pulse fluttered weakly. He was dying. Ethan looked at his horse, then at the empty sky, then at the bodies around him. If he left the boy here, buzzards would pick him apart within hours. Still, saving him was madness. Jedediah would kill Ethan if he found out. And if the Apache woke up angry, he might kill Ethan himself. But Ethan couldn't walk away. He didn't understand why. He only knew he couldn't. With a grunt, Ethan hauled the young warrior onto his shoulders. The boy was light, almost weightless, like life was already slipping out of him. Dust Devil shied from the blood, but Ethan soothed her and lifted the Apache across the saddle. Ethan climbed up behind him, holding the reins with one hand and the wounded boy with the other. He looked north, toward the Dragoon Mountains, toward shelter. He looked south, toward the Circle S Ranch, toward Jedediah's anger. Then he turned away from everything he had ever known and rode toward the mountains. The desert opened before them, wide and empty. Ethan's throat burned with thirst. The sun hammered down until his vision blurred. The young Apache moaned now and then, each sound slicing into Ethan's nerves. He had chosen this. He had chosen to carry an enemy on his own horse. The miles dragged on, until finally Ethan found a narrow canyon holding a trickle of green water, shade, safety, life. He lowered the Apache gently onto the cool ground. The boy's skin burned with fever. His wound was swollen and angry. Infection was already spreading. "You're not dying on me," Ethan said quietly, though he wasn't sure the young man could hear him. He cleaned the wound with water. He dripped a little onto the boy's dry lips. Slowly, the Apache's eyes fluttered open. This time they were clearer, sharper. They searched Ethan's face with deep distrust. "Water," Ethan offered again. The boy hesitated, then drank. Hours passed in uneasy silence. The sun faded into purple dusk. The desert cooled. Ethan sat with his back against a rock, rifle across his lap, watching the Apache. The Apache watched him in return. When night fell, the young warrior finally spoke. "Why?" His voice was rough and thin. Ethan didn't know how to answer. He stared toward the stars. "I didn't want you to die like that," he said softly. "That's all." The Apache studied him for a long moment. Then he whispered a warning. "They will hunt me." "Who?" Ethan asked. The Apache's eyes opened wider with pain and fear. "My cousin, Kyle. He wants to be chief." Then his voice grew even softer. "My father is Cochise." Ethan's whole body went cold. Cochise? The greatest Apache leader in the territory. This wasn't just any wounded warrior. This was the heir. "My name is Dawson," the young man whispered. And in that moment, Ethan's world changed forever. What do you do when every road leads to death, yet you must choose one anyway? Night settled over the canyon, cool and dark, but Ethan's mind burned hot with fear. The young Apache he had saved was not just any warrior. He was Dason, the son of Cochise. The heir, a symbol of hope for his people, and a target worth killing for. Dason lay weak but conscious, his breathing shallow, his body burning with infection. Ethan could see it clearly now. The boy didn't have long unless he got real medicine, the kind no ranch hand carried and no Apache healer could reach in time. The only place close enough was a small, rough trading post 2 days away. Agua Prieta. A place full of drifters, bandits, and desperate men. A place where a wounded Apache heir would be killed on sight. But without a doctor, Dason would not survive the night. Ethan crouched beside him, dipping a cloth into the spring. He dabbed at Dason's forehead. The Apache flinched at his touch, but his eyes stayed on Ethan. "You need help," Ethan said. "You're burning up." Dason's voice was weak but sharp with warning. "No white doctor." "They'll kill me if they know who you are," Ethan said, "and they'll kill you faster." Dason closed his eyes, breathing slowly, as if listening to something Ethan could not hear. "Your people hate mine," Dason whispered. "Why help me?" Ethan swallowed hard. He didn't know the answer. Not really. He only knew that leaving Dason to die had felt wrong in a way that twisted his stomach. "Maybe I got tired of doing what I'm told," he said quietly. Dason's lips twitched. Not a smile, but something close. "You trust too easy," he murmured. "Maybe," Ethan answered, "but I'm in this now." Dason's eyes opened again, dark and steady despite his fever. "If you betray me, I will find you in the next life." "Fair enough," Ethan said. Morning came hot and merciless. Ethan lifted Dason onto Dust Devil and walked beside the horse, keeping the Apache hidden under a spare hat and Ethan's own dirty shirt. The desert stretched before them in an endless ocean of heat, but Ethan pressed on. Every hour mattered. By the second sunset, he saw the low, crooked buildings of Aqua Prieta. A saloon, a general store, a blacksmith, and a wooden sign swinging crookedly above a leaning shack. Dr. Alistair Finch, M.D., all ailments cured. Ethan almost laughed. It sounded like a lie. But it was their only chance. He dragged Dason inside. The doctor was thin and stooped, with watery eyes behind thick glasses. He stared at Dason with a mixture of annoyance and suspicion. "What happened?" Finch asked. "Bandits," Ethan lied. "My partner, he got hit bad." Finch snorted. "Partner? Boy, he's as Apache as the sunrise." Ethan's heart raced. He stood taller, his hand drifting toward his pistol. "You gonna help him or judge him?" Ethan demanded. The doctor stared at Ethan, then at Dason. Behind his glasses, something flickered. Not sympathy, but duty. "It'll cost you everything," Finch said. Ethan dug through his pockets. A few coins, a small pouch of gold dust. His pocket knife, everything he owned. "Take it," he said. "Just help him." The doctor sighed. "Put him on the table. And hold him still." The next hour was agony. Finch cut away the infected flesh. Dason thrashed in fevered delirium, crying out in pain. Ethan held him down, his own heart tearing with every sound. When it was over, Dason lay still, breathing easier. The fever was dropping. "He'll live," Finch said. "But he needs rest. And you need to go. People around here ask too many questions." Ethan wanted to sleep, but exhaustion dragged him into the closest chair. His head fell forward. The world darkened. He woke to the sound of horses. A lot of them. Ethan's blood froze. He moved slowly to the window, peering through the dirt-streaked glass. 3 riders were tying their horses outside the saloon. 2 were Apache. The third was a white gunman with silver pistols and a cold stare. Kyle's men. Dason's hunters. They had found them. Ethan turned to the doctor, his voice a rough whisper. "They're here." Finch paled. "I want no part of this." "I don't want you killed for helping us," Ethan said, "but I need a distraction." "What kind?" Finch asked. "The kind that gives us 10 seconds to escape." The doctor hesitated, then nodded once. Ethan knew fear when he saw it, but he also knew bravery. Finch slipped outside, clutching a wanted poster, waving it in the air. The hired gun turned his head, listening. Finch pointed east, shouting loud enough for Ethan to hear. The Apache hunters stepped out of the saloon. They saw the doctor. Then the doctor pointed toward the desert. Just enough time. Ethan grabbed a glass bottle and smashed it against the wall. The loud crack drew the hunters, attention back toward Finch's office. They ran toward the building. Ethan hauled Dason over his shoulder and pushed through the back door into a narrow alley. Gunfire burst behind him. He didn't look back. His lungs screamed. His legs shook. Dason was dead weight, but Ethan refused to drop him. At the end of the alley, a figure emerged from the shadows. "Over here," a voice whispered. It was the doctor. He held 2 horses by the reins. Ethan stared, stunned. Finch shoved the reins toward him. "Take them. And tell my brother in Tucson he still owes me money." Ethan lifted Dason onto one horse, swung onto the other, and kicked hard. The horses shot forward, dust flying beneath them. Behind them, voices shouted, calling for blood. But Ethan and Dason disappeared into the darkness. Dawn found them miles from the town. Dason slept, his fever fading. Ethan rode beside him, every muscle aching, but some new fire burning inside him. Dason opened his eyes. "You saved me again," he whispered. "You're welcome," Ethan said. Then Dason's gaze hardened. "They will keep hunting, not just Apache, your people too." Ethan nodded. "Then we keep moving." "But where?" Dason asked. Before Ethan could answer, the pounding of hooves echoed behind them. Ethan turned. It was Jedediah Stone. And he was not alone. What would you risk if the only way to live was to stop running and finally make a stand? Ethan froze at the sight of the riders cresting the ridge. Dust devils snorted and stamped nervously. sensing the danger closing in. Jedediah Stone rode at the front of the pack, tall in the saddle of his black gelding, his face set in a look of cold fury. Behind him rode several Circle S ranch hands, rifles ready. They had tracked Ethan, and they knew exactly who he was hiding. Dawson straightened in his saddle, still weak but alert. The wound tugged at his side, yet his eyes burned with sharp intensity. "That is your father now?" Dawson asked quietly. "The man who raised you?" Ethan swallowed hard. "Not my father. Not anymore." Jedediah pulled his horse to a stop in front of them, glaring at Ethan like a man staring at a traitor. "Get off that horse, boy," Jedediah growled. "You've gone and lost your mind." Ethan didn't move. His fingers tightened on the reins. Jedediah's gaze shifted to Dawson, his voice lowered, thick with greed. "That one you're protecting. He's the son of Cochise, worth a bounty that could buy me half this territory." A murmur of excitement rippled through the riders behind him. Dawson remained still, calm as still water, but Ethan felt the tension rolling off him. "You hand him over," Jedediah said, "and maybe, I won't hang you for stealing my horse and running like a coward." Ethan stared at him. For years, Jedediah had held him like a dog on a short rope, but now the rope snapped. "I'm not handing him over," Ethan said. His voice didn't shake. It sounded like it belonged to someone who finally understood himself. Jedediah's jaw tightened. "You siding with him? A savage? Over your own people?" Ethan met his eyes. "He's more of a man than you ever were." A beat of stunned silence. Jedediah's face twisted with rage. "Get them!" Ethan's heart slammed once, then instinct took over. "Ride!" he shouted. Dust Devil leaped forward, and Dawson's horse surged beside them. Gunfire cracked through the air. Bullets tore into the dirt around them. A few whistled inches past Ethan's head. Jedediah was shouting orders, the riders fanning out to surround them. "We can't outrun them," Dawson said. His voice was steady, but breathless. "You have a plan?" Ethan asked. "Yes," Dawson answered. "Follow me." They veered sharply left, cutting through a maze of boulders and thornbrush. Ethan followed close behind, trusting Dawson's knowledge of the land. The terrain grew sharper, rising toward the rugged edges of the Dragoon Mountains. Gunfire faded behind them as the rocks closed in. Ethan felt a tiny spark of hope until he heard new hoofbeats behind them. Not Jedediah's men. Apaches. 3 riders. Their skin painted with ash and red earth. Their eyes cold. Their bodies lean and deadly. They were not Dawson's loyalists. They were Kyle's men. Dawson saw them too, his face hardened. "We are caught between 2 enemies," he said. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Then we need to pick the one we can fight." They dismounted behind a line of boulders, taking cover. Ethan pulled his rifle from the saddle. Dawson drew the knife Ethan had given him earlier. Though weak, he stood tall, shoulders back, ready to defend what he had left of his honor. The Apache riders closed in, slow, cautious, certain of victory. Behind them, Jedediah's men were also closing fast. Trapped. Dawson looked at Ethan. "You should leave me. You can escape." "No," Ethan said. "I'm not walking away." "Why?" Dawson demanded. Ethan steadied his rifle. "Because you're my friend." Dawson blinked, surprised. Then a small nod, a warrior's acceptance. The first Apache rider charged forward, raising his lance. Ethan fired. The shot rang out, knocking the warrior off his horse. The echo bounced off the canyon walls. The other 2 Apaches split apart, rushing from both sides. Dawson dropped low, a flash of speed despite his injury. He twisted, dodged, and slashed one rider's leg. The warrior fell with a cry, crashing into the dust. Ethan fired again, hitting the 3rd rider's horse. It stumbled, pitching its rider into the rocks. Silence, only for a moment. Because Jedediah's men reached them next. Riders poured around the rocks, guns drawn. Ethan felt his chest clench. They were outnumbered 10-1. Jedediah pushed forward on his horse, staring at Ethan and Dawson with triumphant hatred. "This ends now," he said. Ethan raised his rifle, but 2 rifles aimed back at him. Then, behind Jedediah, a sound rolled through the canyon like thunder. Dozens of hoofbeats. Dozens. Apaches, but not Kyle's men. These warriors rode in tight formation, their chests painted, their eyes sharp, their bows drawn. At their head rode Cochise, the chief's gaze locked onto his wounded son. Relief flickered through his stern face. Then he looked at Ethan, long, deep, measuring the boy who had carried his heir out of death's grasp. Jedediah's men froze, fear overtaking their greed. Cochise rode forward, stopping between Ethan and Jedediah. "You have hunted my son," Cochise said. His voice carried like stones sliding down a mountain. Jedediah swallowed. "Your son is worth money." Cochise's face didn't change, but his warriors' bows lifted in unison. "Leave," the chief said, "or die where you stand." Jedediah cursed under his breath. Slowly, bitterly, he turned his horse. His men followed, defeated and shaken. In moments they were gone. Cochise dismounted and knelt beside Dason, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. Then he turned to Ethan. "My son lives because of you," he said. "That life is not a small gift. You saved more than a boy. You saved our future." Ethan lowered his rifle, breath trembling. "Anyone would have done it," he said. "No," Cochise replied. "Only a man with a true heart." The chief stood tall. "Come with us. You will be safe in our land." Ethan met Dason's eyes. There was a bond between them now, earned through blood, danger, and impossible choices. "I'll come," Ethan said quietly, "if your people will have me." Quote. Dason smiled faintly. "You walk between two worlds now." As they rode deeper into the Dragoon Mountains, the sun dipped low, painting the sky gold. The danger was not gone. The future was unknown. But for the first time in his life, Ethan Lee wasn't alone. His act of mercy had rewritten two destinies, his own and the destiny of a nation. And the young cowboy from the Circle S had become something new. A friend, a brother, and a man worth following.